As they say in hockey, let's do that hockey.
Play a full 60 minutes.
Yeah, I'm just trying to keep it simple.
Get pucks deep, bring the puck deep.
Put pucks in deep.
We got to keep it simple and just get pucks going forward.
Getting into the forecheck.
We got to keep playing aggressive.
Trying to take away their time and space.
We're focused on tonight. We just got to stick to our game.
Come on now, former Clarkson Golden Knights captain and current ECHL Worcester Railers star Anthony Callin. Callie, what's going on, buddy?
Hey, Ditz, how we doing?
Not too bad. Even more better now that we've got this one set up here. So we were supposed to have your brother on. We'll talk a little bit about him, but you and your brother both on to pro careers now and both coming out of the NCAA. So let's go all the way back to your childhood. Obviously, he probably is the influence for you. What got you guys started in the game of hockey?
So a lot of my mom's side of the family was heavily involved in hockey, and they still are. Like currently for me and my brother, as you mentioned, we call my uncle. He's a little more distant than that, but he's our agent, and he actually is an agent for NHL players. So that was his job. There's other family members that are agents. My actual uncle just got hired. He's on the coaching staff for the Montreal Canadiens. He was a coach at Vermont and Brown for a while. So all of my mom's side has a very heavy influence for hockey. And I think that they probably pushed us into that really early when we were young. And we ended up liking it, me and my brother. And obviously when you have a brother that's involved too, you have that friendly competition growing up, and that always helps with kind of the passion for the game and keeping playing when you're young.
Your brother's in his 7th season pro currently with the Springfield Thunderbirds, also played with the Worcester Railers. You're now on the Railers coming off captaining the Golden Knights 3 seasons ago. He played NCAA with Bentley University, a former rival of mine, and I was probably front row screaming at him when he was out visiting the RIT Tigers back growing up, which is a funny connection as well. What was it like growing up in the Callin household, the day-to-day? You mentioned having him being there to push you. What was it like for you trying to chase his footsteps?
I mean, specifically for hockey, I've followed him in a sense because he's kind of paved such a good path. Most recently, when it's come to Worcester, the connection actually was that his captain, when he was at Worcester, ended up being the coach and general manager when I was there my last year. So that's kind of how the connection came about. And like they loved him in Worcester and stuff like that. He's always been good at kind of making good relationships at places. So that's kind of, he's helped me out in that sense. But I think going back to our childhood, we were just a very competitive household. I have an oldest sister. She went a different route, and she was a Division I platform diver at the University of Missouri. So we were always just very athletic, always outside, whether it be hockey, knee hockey, golf around the house, basketball. It was just always competitive. And I think that that competitiveness is what kind of drove us getting it to the next level and kind of growing from there.
From out in Wisconsin, you played your whole career out in Madison, Wisconsin, which is a nice feature that we don't see a lot of guys that get to the level you're at have the opportunity to do. Most guys have to move away from home. Talk about the benefits of being able to go all the way through 14U and even up to the USHL and still staying local, where you're able to be around your family and continue to grow without having to move far away from home.
Yeah, that was awesome. Obviously living at home, at that age, you probably don't like living at home as much. You want to move away, but looking back now, I'm glad I was able to spend that extra time with my parents, my family. And I mean, I grew up working at the rink that we ended up playing at for the USHL team. Drove the Zamboni there, sleep in locker rooms and stuff. So that was kind of my summer job, being able to kind of transfer that into into playing there in front of fans was awesome, and being in the hometown there, and because we lived so close to the rink, for a couple of years, we had some billet brothers from some players that came from out of town and stayed at our house for the year, so I was able to have that connection with some players, and I think it was just an awesome experience that, like you said, not a lot of people are blessed to have. And with my house being 5 minutes from the rink, um, it's pretty lucky that you're able to say that you can do that.
You and your brother both made the decision to go to the NCAA, and at the level you guys are at, probably had the opportunity to play in other different juniors leagues. But obviously, the education is a big factor when you make that decision. For each of you, what went into that decision rather than trying to go chase the higher level of uh, Canadian juniors hockey, rather staying in the U.S. and going and playing NCAA?
I would say that my mom, being a teacher, had a big influence on that. Um, I don't think she obviously supported us with hockey and everything, what us to do with hockey, but was always making sure that we were working to get our degrees, making sure we got that good education. So that definitely, I don't even think that major juniors was a thought in our household. It was kind of just wanted to go up that kind of American route of hockey, and my sister playing college sports, being the first one to do that for us three, kind of laid the foundation for me and my brother to follow. And my parents also did play some college sports as well growing up, or when they went to college. So I think it was just college was the thought process right from the get go.
2018-19, you made the jump to the NCAA playing at Clarkson. A few years after that, you'd have me chasing your coattails around for a few years. Uh, what was it about Clarkson that stood out to you?
Clarkson kind of approached me in a very quick manner. They reached out at the end of my USHL season, and I was kind of finishing up my last couple games, thinking like, okay, I'm playing another year of USHL. Like, no need to rush getting into college. And they reached out. I was able to come on a visit, and I just kind of liked the small town feel of it. Was able to get shown around and just kind of talk to some big name guys like Nico and Brassel were the ones that kind of showed me the ropes during my visit. And I just liked the small feel, the kind of history of the hockey, and I knew that would be a place where I would kind of thrive. So the decision was pretty easy once I left my visit, and next day told them that I was ready to come.
Couple of names hanging behind me. Sturm and Josh Dunn. You also mentioned Devin Brasso, who's currently playing out in the KHL. Those guys were all leaders that were ahead of you. You went on to be both an assistant captain in the 21-22 season and a captain in the following year after that. What were the biggest leadership core values that were instilled early in your first couple of years playing under those guys?
I think Clarkson just inherently is the like blue collar underdog. That's kind of the mentality that they've always taken in comparison to like a Big Ten school that's big name. We're not necessarily known throughout the U.S. just for our college. Like, people will know University of Wisconsin, they'll know what Penn State is because their football programs and stuff like that. Um, so I think that they just kind of helped establish or continue to establish the Clarkson culture. I don't know if it was necessarily them. It might have even been years beforehand too that they just kind of carried it along. So yeah, it wasn't much new when I became captain. It was just, hey, these are the values that they taught me, that the person before them taught them, that I just have to teach the younger guys, like, hey, this is what Clarkson is. This is kind of our MO, and this is what makes us be a winning team. And especially with my freshman year, they were able to establish that pretty quickly and show me that.
You guys played in quite a few big games, won an ECAC championship, also appeared in a few NCAA tournaments. Uh, you also had a few games that you returned back. You played in Wisconsin against the Badgers in front of a hometown crowd that you're on the other side of. Obviously, the St. Lawrence rivalries are games every year that stand out. Looking back at the ECAC schedule for Clarkson specifically, what games are most memorable to you looking back on your college career?
Uh, I think it's hard for me to say or to not say the ECAC championship game. That was obviously a huge game. Um, Always get a laugh of my good buddy Chris Clack not getting the celebration with the team, everyone going to the wrong guy. He'll never live that down. But that game obviously stands out. I was lucky enough to play in Wisconsin a good amount of times, like going into my college career, and I thought maybe that would happen, and was able to go a couple of different years. And those were always awesome because family, big family showing up and stuff like that. But yeah, you pretty much nailed all the ones. Wisconsin, ECAC championship game would probably stick out as the number one, and then uh, every St. Lawrence game. But if I had to choose a second for me personally, it was against SLU, a SLU weekend. It was me and Dunner, I believe the night before, scored the OT winner to win, and then I scored the OT winner the next night, or it might have been vice versa. And scoring an OT winner against SLU is always feels good, especially at home too. So that was a big one for me. But there's so many games looking back at it now, and I think you mentioned a lot of them.
I think I could pick out both of those goals. That was the 2019-20 season. That would have been my freshman year.
Mm-hmm.
That year revolutionized the development of a lot of hockey players. And in your case, it ended up being an advantage. You're the first guy that we've had on our show that's an active player that was through college throughout the entire COVID pandemic. For you guys, it was devastating when it happened. The team was up in the top three nationally, on an absolute tear, headed to be one of the favorites in the NCAA tournament. And then the pandemic hits, didn't even get to have an ECAC championship run where it would have been you guys and Cornell, who's also in the top three, heavy favorites to meet up in Lake Placid there. Also didn't get, obviously, a run to make a chance at an NCAA tournament run. Um, Looking back at that season, the whole experience, everything that went on, you decided to stay at Clarkson. That's when the transfer portal rules all changed up. You stuck with it through that season where Clarkson was one of the few teams playing, no fans in the stands, any of that. Talk about the experience of, just the whole 360 of going from being one of the top programs in the country to being one of the only programs in the country that was able to play.
Yeah, that was crazy. And looking back at those teams, not that I would wish for COVID to happen again, obviously, but I think that time frame brought the team so close together because we were all just just trying to get through it. I know that it was long years for guys that we couldn't go home for Christmas, couldn't see family, guys couldn't see their girlfriends or anything like that for the whole year. So we were super tight as a group, and you just kind of had to try to find something to keep it going. Like practice wasn't necessarily, guys didn't want to be there maybe one day just because they're down in the dumps and stuff like that. So it was just a lot of team bonding and kind of figuring that out from a personal level and just checking in on guys outside of hockey, like, hey, like how you doing and stuff like that. Like forget the hockey. And I think that that opened my eyes a little bit of that sense. Like, yeah, you're a team, you want to win and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, we're all humans. So you got to just check on each other. And that was a tough time for everyone. And like I said, I think it brought the team closer together. And I think because of those times, those seasons, I'm still in contact with a lot of those guys just because of how much we were together and stuff like that.
You can hear the leadership caliber for the fans listening. You went on to be the assistant captain the following season, the captain in your fifth year. And the positive that came out of that pandemic was the ability for all of the athletes in that scenario to go and play fifth years. For you, it led to a fifth year staying at Clarkson and pursuing a master's degree. Talk about the decision to not only stay in the NCAA, but also stay with Clarkson.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what you said, or the question you asked before too. For my family and my parents, like degree was big, and yeah, COVID wasn't great, but it gave me the opportunity to get an MBA, which I never thought that I was going to be able to, no matter what I was doing. So that checked the box to stay for a fifth year, and then I just knowing that I kind of missed some seasons and stuff like that, I felt like I was in no rush to kind of go anywhere and wanted to come back for that fifth year and always loved Clarkson. So I didn't feel like I needed to try to go anywhere else. Clarkson was home for me. So it was kind of a pretty easy decision to come back for that fifth year.
You've come back to campus a couple times since. You and I were both on campus this past summer for one of the alumni events where everyone comes back and stays in the dorms. And there was all kinds of guys from back as far as the 1960s of alumni that came to stay in the dorms for that week. Talking to the big group there, and all kinds of accoladed alumni, a couple of NHL guys, Benny Sexton, one of the guys that we had on the show earlier this summer. What were some of the biggest stories that stood out to you in the lasting culture of Clarkson University?
I think I mentioned a little bit of it earlier, but it's like the traditions have stayed. Like we were talking about them and stuff that they did as a team, little team bonding things, and the stuff you do before the season and stuff like that. And like they did the same thing. It was almost identical to us. And you think like, oh, like some of that stuff fades after a couple of years. Guys try to like do a different little team bonding activity, stuff like that. But it was the exact same. And I think that shows from what I said about the captains when I came in. It's just kind of transferring that tradition. So it was just kind of funny to listen to those guys say the same things and just talk hockey, talk. Yeah, I think college hockey has changed a lot even since I've graduated in the past 2 years, and talking to them too. It's just a different landscape. So getting a different point of view. Obviously the locker room and facilities and stuff like that way different for them. So that was awesome being able to catch up with those guys and make that type of connection.
Highlight of my hockey career came that week playing in the alumni game, beat you in a draw quick. After that 22-23 season, you signed your first professional deal with Worcester, following in your brother's footsteps again. Talk about the moment that you found out you were going to be moving on to the pro ranks and what the signing process was like on the player side.
Yeah, it was exciting. I was excited to get going. It's interesting because you go from your season ending in college to gearing up to join a team that's on a playoff push. So it's like you kind of have to mentally snap back into it and be like, hey, even though the season just ended and we got eliminated, unfortunately, I have to dial back in and get ready to help this team win right away, because they were on a playoff push and end up going into the last game of the season that we needed to win, and we didn't end up winning to make playoffs. But I think it was awesome, and it was a easy transition because of my brother. Like I said, everyone knew him there, everyone liked him there. So probably for the 2 months I was there or whatever it was, I was known as Drew's brother. But I think in that time I was able to make a name for myself too, and kind of establish myself there.
How much of an inspiration has your brother been? And obviously, the goal is always to get to the next level. That would be the AHL from where you are. Your brother started with Worcester, and he's now made a pretty illustrious career on a one-way in the AHL, where you're trying to do the exact same thing now. How much has your brother inspired you in that sense?
He's a huge inspiration for me, especially now that I'm in that pro level, because he's been there for a while. Is I think the casual hockey fan doesn't understand how much it takes to jump from the ECHL to the AHL, and how hard it is to make that jump and also stick it. And he was able to get called up, and he never came back, not even for a day, which is I think, a huge bonus for him and just shows how hard he works at it. And he was doing that coming off of a season where COVID, Worcester didn't play. So he went and tried to play for Rapid City in the ECHL and was there for a couple games and then pretty much didn't play a season because of COVID and then followed it up and was able to make that jump. And I think he just taught me a lot about hockey and kind of knowing what your role is on a team and how to show a GM or a scout how you fit into a roster spot.
You had a breakout season last year and maybe one of the best of your career, 49 points in 67 games played with Worcester. Now looking forward for you individually, where are some of your personal goals going into this season?
For this season, our team's talk with all the returners has been playoffs as a minimum. Like I said, 2 years ago, it came down to the last game. We didn't make playoffs. Last season, it came down to the last game. We didn't win, didn't make playoffs. So it was 2 years in a row that happened. So we feel that we need to make playoffs. And like I said, that's a minimum. And from there, we got to push to make a good playoff run. And I think for me personally, coming back as a returner, there's not a lot of returners on our team, a lot of young guys. So being a leader, trying to establish myself and hopefully put up some points that'll help the team win as well.
And again, the core leadership showing through is the question about goals goes straight to we and the team. Callie, last one for you. For any younger players that are trying to follow in the exact same steps that you are here and looking to make it to the pro ranks, what would your advice be in being able to handle the steps when you have to step from each next level? For you, it was juniors to the NCAA to the ECHL, but however those players are doing it, what advice would you have for them?
I would say know your role. And this gets tied into my brother kind of teaching me this as well. And I've learned it too, is not necessarily, you don't necessarily have to be the top goal scorer on every team to make it to the next level. That's not the rankings of who they call up. It could be the guy who has a 70% win faceoff percentage and is super good on PK, which is essentially how my brother got to the AHL, and that's his core strengths. Yeah, he puts up points, but that's kind of how he got there, and then the points followed. So know what your strengths are and really play into them, whether that be the small little things of killing penalties or blocking shots or whatever that is. Really lean into those strengths because that's what'll get you there, and then the skill and points will follow with the opportunity after you get there. That would be my biggest thing for anyone trying to make any sort of jump to the next level.
Anthony Callin and the Worcester Rallers are now about a month into their season. Callie, always a pleasure catching up with you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Ditz. This is awesome.